Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. I am your host, Dr. Phil Finemore, owner of WorkFitME Mobile Physical Therapy. The goal of this podcast is to help busy Maine professionals achieve and improve upon the mental, emotional, and physical strength they need to fulfill their true purpose in life. I have a passion for sharing my true purpose with others. I invite you to join me as I discuss holistic health and wellness tips with friends, colleagues, and even heroes and mentors to help you strengthen your true purpose in life. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again today. Have another awesome guest interview coming your way. A former colleague of mine who's done a bunch of changing and pivoting. We've talked a lot about changes and pivots and how powerful those things can be on the podcast. But I want to introduce you all to my friend Valerie Feghali, who is a certified holistic health and nutrition coach and a doctor of physical therapy. Her mission in life is to fill the gap in the healthcare model, that gap being nutrition and holistic treatments to allow her clients to live out their happiest lives. She does one-on-one nutrition coaching along with digital and membership programs to support people with healthy living habits. Valerie, thanks so much for coming on today.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here, Phil. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. I mean, just based on the description we read about what you're doing, and I already alluded to some of the pivots and changes you've made in your career and how you're helping people. It's just a perfect fit for the information we're trying to get out to people today. So I was real excited to bring you on. So to jump right into it here, talk to us a little bit about what you do, what your practice is called, and what it's all about.
Yeah. So actually funny you mentioned that because my business is in body wellness, but I am just making some branding changes now, and it's going to be Valerie Diane very soon. So
okay,
you'll see that change. Yep. And that's still me. But yeah, I do one-on-one nutrition coaching with people. I also do some digital programming. It's just a more affordable way for people to get access to the same, information and guidance. But with the one-on-one coaching, of course, we're able to go a lot more deep into people's real, true, root causes of their challenges with nutrition, which a lot of times goes beyond their food choices.
Sure.
So of course those one-on-one treatments are effective, but then a lot of times people will continue with my membership programs or my digital programs after that for just more knowledge and more support as they go along in their journey. But yeah, it's been a fun transition for me because, as you know, Phil, we used to work together as physical therapists, and I still do some physical therapy, but really my focus now is health and nutrition coaching. And I got into that because as you know, seeing people as a physical therapist and physical therapy is amazing, and there's definitely a big place for it in the medical society. But a lot of times people have these underlying issues going on that just really aren't being talked about or addressed and kind of looked over. And, I was of course seeing people with terrible knee pain and back pain, and they had systemic inflammation. It wasn't just their knee, just their back, but we were treating them for kind of one isolated part of their body when really it needed to be approached more from like a gut perspective, which is oftentimes the root of people's issues. And then of course, mindset perspective too. And so I found myself talking more and more about that with clients, but being unable to, number one, being unable to bill for it, but then also just that's not why people were coming to see me. So the conversation maybe wasn't as open to it,
right?
Because that wasn't really what they were there for. And so, yeah, I made this transition here to try to fill that space because it didn't feel like it was really being filled. And I love it. I'm super passionate about it. So
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's one of those things where whether you're, I've felt this myself as a physical therapist, when you're, it can be hard sometimes to bring up some of those things that person might not see as within your scope. Like, hey, you're not a dietitian or a nutritionist, or you're not a psychiatrist or whatever, stay in your lane type of thing. But yeah, that stuff can be very powerful. And I know that there's a lot more information coming out about that, the systemic inflammation. I mean, from my limited understanding, and I definitely want you to elaborate on this, a lot more of that started coming out when the when the whole, I guess for lack of a better term, I'll call it the anti-gluten frenzy came along, or we just got more information about that, right? It's not like a campaign against gluten by any means, but we understood more about how that affects our body systemically, right? And where that all stems from. So I'm guessing the research in the past, I don't know, decade or so has only gotten better at showing us that it's probably not just gluten that might affect that. It's other things as well. And we've kind of found some of the channels that affects that. Is that something that you've noted as well in your training and as you've shifted over to the model you're using now?
Absolutely. And like you said, people, you're like, it's kind of not, but kind of is a campaign against gluten.
Right.
But people are like that. They fall into these camps, and people have such strong views on nutrition. They're a vegan, or they're a vegetarian, or they're paleo, or they're, keto, or there's so many different names for these quote unquote diets, where really they're all based around kind of bringing health back to the gut in different ways. And there is not a right or wrong path. But there are wrong ways to do each one of those, right?
Yes.
So you can be a very unhealthy vegan, you can be a very unhealthy keto or paleo, or you can spin it the other direction, really focus on whole foods and kind of, okay, what really truly is damaging the lining of the gut? What are my food sensitivities and irritabilities, and try to take it to a higher level. And of course, some people have either, humanitarian or religious views for doing certain things that they do too. And that should be respected, and kind of their program with me is tailored around that. And we try to work with, what their personal views and beliefs are on all of that.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's obviously very important, because what the person values is important too. And you spoke a little bit before about mindset, and I started thinking about that as you were talking about all those different terms or like you said, diets that people tend to go on, and whether they go the right way down that keto or paleo road, or the wrong way. And the idea of restriction, I think, is what, people do one of two things. They either go way too far into it and maybe go down that not so great road, or they are a little bit more pragmatic about it and it tends to go the right way. Is that something that you see, that you help people? I'm speaking from personal experience when I say that as well, but is that something that you see a lot in your clientele, of you're having to help shift that mindset of, let's just simplify this and see if we can find the right thing for you? Is that what you're focusing on a lot?
Absolutely. And all of my plans are not restrictive. And that, I think that is the key to success, is that you can't say, I'm never going to have a bagel again. I'm never going to have a muffin again, or whatever it is. And oftentimes, so unfortunately, obesity and being overweight has been kind of shamed a little bit. And it's not something that should be shameful. It's really something that should be treated like any other medical diagnosis. And instead, we play the blame game. We say, I don't have enough willpower. I don't have enough strength. I give in too easily. And that is not true. It couldn't be more, more false. It goes so much deeper than that. And there's the side of it where it's really like the marketing and the confusion behind the actual what's healthy, what's not. And then there's also the side of it that we don't address, which is like a relationship with circadian rhythm and light, our relationship with our stress management, our physical human connection with the people we love. All of that plays even our sleep, all of that plays almost a bigger role in our ability to lose or gain weight or muscle than sometimes the actual food that we're eating. I have so many people who are like, I barely eat anything. They'll tell me what their food looks like, and it's not that unhealthy in terms of the choices that they're making, and they're certainly not going over any sort of calorie limit, but they're having big time struggles with weight loss. And there's these other things that need to be talked about and addressed for us to get there a lot of times. So I forget what your original question was now, but yeah, I think that definitely, like, getting further down into that root cause and figuring out what that is, rather than saying, okay, you're restricted to, this many macros a day. And like that doesn't work. That doesn't work long-term. It's not a long-term plan. So yeah, really, really figuring out those other things is crucial.
For sure. And you hit the nail on the head with something that resonates with me, and that it's never just the one thing, right? Like you said, going back to the example when you were doing physical therapy as your primary career, we're never just treating back pain, right? We're treating the person's perception of the back pain, and we're helping them try to figure out how to sleep better, and we're helping them trying to figure out how to move more effectively, so that can have a bigger impact on their mood and their mental state and their emotions and things like that. It's all very super interconnected, and especially with food, you mentioned all those other things that play into the success or failure of those programs that someone might be on. There's an incredible emotional attachment to food and weight loss, just beyond some of the shame or blame that you talked about, that can really be hard for people to overcome. So
Absolutely.
That plays a huge role. So talk to us a little bit about some of the strategies you use for that, because I think that is making some of those changes and how difficult those initial hurdles are to overcome. In my own personal experience and just in working with clients, that emotional part of things tends to be one of the biggest. And wondering if you agree with that, and what some of the strategies you use to progress that along.
Absolutely. So first of all, it comes to awareness, right? And getting the person to recognize like it is not your fault, number one. And this is something that can be changed, but we really need to do work around it. And some people, they don't necessarily want to put in that work, because they need to get over the guilt and the shame of it. And that can be really a challenge to like dive into it, you know?
Yeah.
So a lot of times with people, I'll have them start by beginning to bring awareness by like journaling around it. So for example, if they find themselves in the pantry or standing in front of the refrigerator, eating straight out of the refrigerator, they need to write down the emotion they were feeling at that time, and write down how they felt after it, right? Both physically and emotionally, and start to connect the dots between like, okay, I was there because I was anxious, because I had a meeting that I was nervous for, or because my kid was crying, or, you know, whatever that feeling was while they were doing it. What were they trying to escape from? Because we're always trying to escape from something. And a lot of times food is our escape. So if you're trying to escape from anxiety, you're trying to escape from pain, you're trying to escape from, you know, a deadline, procrastinating, there's always like an escape that we're trying to find. And people use food to do that often. And so first recognizing that, tying that together, and then doing like kind of the 20-minute rule. So, okay, the next time that emotion comes up and they find themselves, you know, standing in front of the pantry again, telling themselves, I'm going to wait 20 minutes. And if I still want that cookie, I still want that donut, or whatever it was that they were going for, okay, in 20 minutes, you can go get it if you still want it. But you may have gotten over that feeling before that comes. And then we need to replace it with something that is rewarding that drive. So for example, if they're trying to relieve anxiety, then we need to do something that's anxiety relieving instead of the eating. So that might be breath work for just 2 minutes. You know, that might be mindful, like quiet meditation. Maybe they even put on an app, 5-minute meditation app. Maybe they're trying to escape from work. That might be their drive. If they're trying to escape from work, then something that would replace that is, okay, go read 5 pages in a book you've escaped, or go text a friend or call a friend, take a walk. But try to replace that with what they're really trying to achieve, and not going to feel guilty about afterwards.
Yeah, it's no, that's very powerful. I think that combination of reflection, like why am I doing that, and being aware of that probably takes a little bit of time and practice, because it's not something we're always in tune to, and if our default is going to the fridge, going to the pantry, whatever the case might be, being in tune with the fact that you're doing it because you might be on a little bit of autopilot probably takes a little time. But I think on top of the reflection, taking it to that next step and having a strategy to fix it, right? Because we can reflect all we want, but if we don't have a strategy to fix it, that reflection's only going to go so far.
Yeah. So here's an example. Like, so for example, I'm thinking of a client right now who she was super busy. She had a full-time job. She had 2 little babies at home, and she was going back to school, and she would go to school and then come home and have to log on to work. And she's like, every time I get home from school, I would eat like a box of Cheetos and before signing on to the computer. And I'm like, okay, let's go down, let's go through that sequence here and try to figure out what's going on and what you're trying to find. And she didn't really know at first what it was that she was trying to find. But turns out, like, every time she would sit down at her desk to start work, she would open her email as the first thing. The email is a downward slide. You never know what's going to be in your email. And it's a little bit like scary sometimes to open your email. Right. And so she was looking for comfort. She wanted something that was familiar, comfortable, that was going to make her feel safe. So what we did was we designed her desk so that it was like more of a safe place with like soft lighting and a blanket. And then instead of opening her email as the first thing, the day before, I had her open whatever screen it was that she was going to start with work that day, like one easy task to start with. That's not email, that's predictable, something that she knows. And so she no longer had to like try to find that comfort, because it was like, oh, I can sit at my desk, it's comfortable, I have a warm tea, and I'm going to work on this one thing that it's going to take me 5 minutes to do. I know exactly what I need to get done.
Yeah.
So it's finding those little things, because we tend to do it at certain times of the day, right? Too. Like, a lot of people will be like, the Sunday scaries, and it's like they binge eat on Sunday night, so it's finding that routine to try to take away that pressure, whatever it is they're trying to get away from.
Yeah, that's huge. Those little small changes. A phrase I like to use is a small movement with big improvement, right? You do one little small thing, and you add a couple of those up that don't take a lot of effort. They don't take they're not like a major like 180 or anything like that. And they can snowball pretty quickly. And not only are they going to help that situation that you're trying to fix with those adjustments, but it's going to spill over into other areas as well.
Yep. And you can apply that to anything. You can apply that to business, life, nutrition. Like, so I like to use the plane analogy. It's my favorite thing because I can see it visually. But like, if you change the angle at takeoff, right, of a plane by just 1 degree, it's going to end up in a completely different spot at landing, right, than it would have. So just changing one thing, and it could be, in terms of nutrition, it could be taking 1 packet of sugar out of your coffee a day. You know how much that adds up at the end of the year?
Huge.
So those little teeny tiny habits, like you said, like, don't try to make this huge lifestyle change all in one swoop.
Right.
It's these little things that, we start to tack on to one another, and it becomes a big transition at the end of, the end of the 6 months or the year. But to try to do complete 180, like you said, in one day, it's just not feasible, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah. And the minute something familiar comes back, or there's a hurdle to jump that you weren't prepared for in your big 180 switch, you're relapsing right back into those old habits and starting all over again. And that's very damaging to the psychological aspect of these types of changes, I think.
Right. Yeah. And that's another thing that people have to try to, like, that I have to work with people through, is that it's not going to be this nice, gradual, linear success, line to success. There's going to be times that we downfall, that we take a step backwards. And without a doubt, that will happen. You go on vacation, if it's nutrition related, great. We have tons of margaritas. We get back and we're like, oh God, it's so hard to get back into the rhythm. Right.
Right.
But when we start to build rituals, when we start to build habits, it's a lot easier to get back into the swing of things when you do fall down. And we're all going to fall down at some point.
Right.
We have those like real concrete habits, real concrete rituals set in place, that it's a lot easier to get back into the game.
Definitely. Yeah. And when it's, when you have that foundation, right, that foundation is there, and what's been successful before, it makes those hurdles, or like you said, we stumble, fall down a little bit. It makes it a lot less daunting, a lot less scary, and makes you a lot more successful long term, because it's okay. Like it's a practice. It's something that happens over a long period of time. It's really, especially with nutrition, it's probably not probably, it's something you're going to be working on the rest of your life, right?
Right.
It's never gonna, it's not like you can put that on autopilot
Yep.
eventually and not have to worry about it. It's a lifelong journey, not
It is a
a
lifelong journey.
not a stopgap or a short-term solution to a long-term problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of actually like accountability groups now. I've been doing more and more of
Mm.
them, and that's been so fun because exactly because of like when you fall off track, you don't want to report 2 weeks in a row to a group of 5 people that like
Yeah.
you haven't been able to pick it back up, right? So
Mm.
having that support of the group and just, through weekly calls and weekly texts and emails, it's really nice for people because of the accountability, but also because they're realizing that they're not alone in the journey,
Mm.
right? And when you realize that this is not something that only I struggle with, and it makes it a lot more easy to overcome.
Yes. Yeah, that accountability part is huge. Where it's so funny. And again, I'm gonna speak from some more personal experience. We're so stinking hard on ourselves, and we but it's funny how we'll show up for other people. Even though that change is going to be so positive in whatever aspect of your life you're talking about, in this case nutrition.
Yeah.
And we know it's going to just make us feel good, feel better, be better for the people around us and show up better for the people around us. We still put even a little more stake in it when we're almost make ourselves feel like we're doing it for someone else, even though we're doing it for ourselves. Right.
Yeah. And that's really the basis of humanity, right? Is our social connection. I mean, that's why we live and survive. We wouldn't have a life to live if we didn't have people to live up to, right? And people to, enjoy life with. And so, I mean, do you think you would have the same drive if you were dropped off on an island somewhere and had no one to connect with? No, it's like we do everything in life for other people. And people always say like, don't do it for them, do it for yourself. And yeah, but also like enjoy your relationships, talk to people about what you do, bring them into your journey. Like that is so, having that community is so valuable, and really that is like the number one predictor of success, is like how the people we surround ourselves with. So I mean, I'm all about bringing others in and bringing them along with you.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. And you really have to have the people, especially that you live with, on board with what you're doing. Because and I'm sure that's something that you talk about, but we've talked about it before on the podcast and other realms of health and wellness. But if you don't have the immediate support system to get yourself off the ground, that's a huge thing. But yeah, bringing in an even a bigger extended community once you get going, I think can be really crucial to success. Again, with anything, with any new lifestyle change that you're starting off on.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
I love my husband and wife teams are fun to work with because of that. They tend to be more successful rather than just trying to do it on their own when their partner is with them on it. So
sure. Yeah. No, that makes a huge difference. So talk to us a little bit about what it looks like when someone starts up with you, because you've given us a few tips and tricks you like to employ with people, and we've kind of talked a little bit about what success can look like, what the journey can look like a little bit. When someone kind of first comes into your world and is going to start working with you, what does that progression look like with all the different types of programs, great programs you have going for people?
Yeah, so typically people will start with me one-on-one. And so I'll do a consultation with them, an initial interview, and we try to figure out, okay, number one, what are your goals? That's the biggest thing. Like, what are they trying to achieve here? And I'm all cash pay, which I love, because the people who are coming to me are like invested, they're motivated, they're ready to go.
Yes.
And I'm not held by any standards of the insurance companies. I can focus on what the client and I want to focus on.
Yes.
And I don't have to be, restricted by the insurance rules. So
100%.
So they come to me and we do an initial assessment. We figure out, okay, what are your goals? What is holding you back right now? What do you feel the biggest barriers are? And then we get into deeper things. I go down like a symptom chart, things that they may not even have connected with food. And so we go down all of that. We go through how their sleep is, what their relationships are like, just get into kind of the nitty gritty on the first session. And then we come up with just like like you said, start small, like 2 or 3 things that they need to focus on that week to get started.
Yeah.
So sometimes people want this like big plan the first day, right? And it's
Mm.
like, yes, I have this grand view of what I want it to look like for you in the end. But if I give this all to you on day one, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
So we pick 2 or 3, sometimes 1 to 3 things to really focus and hone down on that week. And then I usually see them again the following week. We kind of see how that week went. We add 1 or 2 new things, and then we just keep progressing from there. I generally do like a 5-session pack with people. So they sign up for 5 sessions. And that can be anything from once a week to once every 2 weeks. Sometimes towards the end, it's once a month, depending on how well the client is doing.
Sure.
Yeah. And then a lot of times, that they may sign up for more after that, just because they like to have the accountability and the continued education on it.
Yeah.
And then other times they're doing great and they just do the membership program after that for a little bit of follow-up, because with that program, they still have access to me at any time. They can email, text me their questions. So yeah, so it's fun. It's really fun. And it's really, it's rewarding for me to see the amount of change that can happen in a pretty short period of time when people really get down to it and get invested and do the work. So yeah, it's cool. I love it.
Yeah. That combination of investment, motivation, and accountability, not just in that one-on-one part of it, but also long-term, is huge, because there's so many areas of healthcare that are, I like to use the term, treat them and street them. We get you as good as we think we can in this time frame, because that's the time frame we use to get you to the whatever point that is, and we say, okay, here's a few things you can keep working on, good luck. And how many times have we seen that actually work? I mean, it probably works to a point, but it is never as sustainable as we'd like to think it would be. So having that continued contact point, those ways to very easily and seamlessly get back into the program that got you going on the right track in the first place is a great way to make sure that this long-term, lifelong journey that they're going to start on with you is going to be sustainable for that amount of time.
And some people don't realize like how good they can have it too until they get rolling with it. Like, so for example, one of my clients, her A1C dropped like 3 points just after 6 weeks of working together. And she's kind of like, I think I'm good, I think I'm good. And I'm like, hold up. We're not done making progress here, right? Like there is so much progress. Like we're not plateauing. We're not just saying like, okay, we're checking in. No, we're adding new goals. We're adding new things. We're changing it up. We've been talking about nutrition for 6 weeks. Let's now start to talk about, mindset and the lighting in your house and all those other different things that we can like really maximize to get you like the absolute best you can possibly be. And people start to realize like, wow, my life is different with all of these things. I have more energy. I have less, anxiety. I'm happier. It's not just about like the aesthetics. It's about really that deep confidence, that energy level. It can be so good if we can really, maximize everything with the food, but then outside of the food as well too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Working into even more of prevention almost, right? Like let's, yes, we took care of the original issue, but let's prevent it from coming back by giving you even more tools in the toolbox to support this incredible improvement and this great new feeling that you have with the progress you've made. Yeah.
And preventative medicine is definitely one of those things too in our culture that's really non-existent. Essentially. I mean, we have regular check-ins with our doctor, that type of thing, but it's not something that people focus on the regular. And it needs to be something that's put on the forefront, because I mean, the best way to treat someone is to prevent it from happening in the first place. And so
100%. Yeah. I just actually did a podcast episode on that not too long ago, talking about the idea of health assurance versus health insurance, and not insurance being like the insurance plan, but insurance being more reactive instead of proactive. We, our yearly physical is good at looking at the general picture, and if there are any major red flags going to the specialists that work with that, but searching out specialists that can work on your movement and your function and your nutrition and your just general health and wellness, whether it be mental, emotional, physical, whatever the case might be, almost doing checkups with those people, right? Even if you feel like I got it, I'm good. There could be something going on that I actually had someone just the other day. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. We were doing an initial screen, a prevention screen. And, well, what about this? And then we go down the rabbit hole a little bit and, hey, there is something here. Let's look into that. Let's see how we can improve that. We seem to be okay sometimes with things that aren't that big of a problem, but when we have them, they're kind of a problem. Yeah. In my experience, and I know that you'll likely agree with this, is eventually those things stop coming and going and they just are here to stay. Right. and then we might drag our feet even a little longer before we get the help with it. And now it's really a problem. So let's try to head that off. Right.
Right. Yep. It's a lot harder to go backwards. It is possible. It is possible for most quote unquote diseases, which is really just an accumulation of symptoms, but
right.
It's possible to go backwards, but it's a lot harder to do that, of course.
A lot more work.
A lot more work. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, Valerie, can't thank you enough for joining us today. Before we wrap up, I got a couple more questions with you that we like to ask all of the guests on the podcast. But before we do that, how can people find you? What's the best way for people to reach out and find you?
Yeah, they can just go. So my website is embody with an E, embody-wellness.com. They can reach out to me through there. They can also email me is probably the quickest way to correspond with me. And I don't know if you drop it in the show notes or not, but
yes,
Valerie@embodywellness.com. Yep. And then they can also look me up on Instagram too, v.feghali, which is my last name. So yeah, follow me on Instagram. I post some fun nutrition tips. So if people are just kind of looking to start getting into the game and see what they can do easily, then that would be a good place to start.
Awesome. Yes. And all of those things will be in the show notes. So if you want to connect with Valerie on social media or reach out, ask her a question, find out more about how she can help you, those will be in the show notes. So our last two questions before we wrap up. Number one, what is your definition of strength?
I think so. Yeah, gosh, that has molded over the years. And over the past few years, I've had some struggles to overcome. And I think the ability, and you've kind of recognized this too, Phil, but the ability to pivot and not be, not feel like you're a victim of anything, right?
Yes.
I think that's a lot to do with strength. We need to view this life as opportunity, and really anything that comes our way, try to utilize that to better ourselves, right? Have that growth mindset. Say, how can I spin this to actually have been a good thing for me? And anything, you could get laid off from your job. You could have problems in your relationship, whatever it is. If you really use that to your advantage and say, how can I make myself better from this terrible situation? It ends up being a good thing.
I couldn't agree more. That's great. That's a great answer. The second question is, what is your true purpose in life?
I think my true purpose is really to help people recognize how good they can feel, both from an emotional standpoint and also from a physical standpoint. I think we are with the way food is marketed and the way we live in this day and age with all the technology and everything, we've kind of gone down this scary rabbit hole. And I think that my purpose in life is to try to bring people back to simplicity and try to just help people start to recognize what is truly important in their life, what drives them, what motivates them, and how we can kind of focus our efforts in health coaching on that.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. That's great. And you're doing a great job. Everybody go check out her Instagram, because she's not lying when she says fun tips. They are very fun. She does a great job on there. So go check that out. Valerie, thank you so much for joining me again. This was great. A lot of great information for people. So can't thank you enough for that.
Thank you so much, Phil. And you've done amazing. And I'm so happy to see the way that your business is progressing. It's so cool and so fun to see everything that you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. So everybody, want to thank you very much for tuning in and listening. If you found value out of this, which I'm sure you have, please be a friend and tell a friend. I always appreciate people sharing so that we can get this great, valuable information out to more people. Always appreciate a 5-star rate and review on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when new videos drop. And we will see you all back here next time on the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. Thanks, everybody.